Hello, Fabian. How are
Hi
you?
Ben,
Nice
good
to
and
be
you?
talking to you on this very public forum of Twitch.
Yeah, it's nice being here.
Wh-
Especially now that we are like an ocean away.
I know. So wait, where are you right now? I mean, I know where you are, but where are you for the wonderful world of Twitch?
I'm in Frankfurt am Main in Germany.
You're in
What about
Frankfurt
you?
am Main in Germany. Right now, I am in southern Florida. I am in a beautiful hotel lobby, as you might be able to tell. But I actually, most of the time, live outside Tel Aviv in Israel, which is usually why we're much closer together in time zones than we are right now. So for me, this is a little bit after 8 in the morning. And for you, this is the middle of the day,
Right,
give or take. Isn't the world strange that way?
it is.
Hello, everyone. It is so nice of you to join us on this Hacktoberfest daily stream. This is our first time doing the daily stream together, and we're super excited. We want to talk about just a bunch of random stuff. We'll talk about Germany. We'll talk about Florida, and we're also going to primarily talk about something that we've been working on for a long time now. Actually, almost singularly working on for the past several months, which is to build this new open source platform tool that we have been building, and we're really excited about. And we're also really excited that it's open source because we really think that putting our work out there in the open is super important. And making it accessible to others to both contribute to, but also to use, is just awesome. I don't know, it's kind of cool. Not everyone gets to work in open source for their day job, and I think we're both really fortunate that we get to do that. Um, you know, that our stuff is just out there, and that we get to contribute to the wider community um, every day, thanks to Vonage, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just awesome. And yeah, given that, like, I don't know about you, but I'm a big fan of open source. Well, as long as I can remember. And yeah, I mean, I guess one of the most important things that I like about it is that, yeah, like everyone can contribute to it. Everyone is welcome to improve everything. And that's kind of like one of the reasons why we do it. Like, not only because we kind of need to work on these tools, but we also want other people to improve them and benefit from them.
Exactly, and it's awesome. I remember that the first time I made a contribution to an open source project, it was for me like a paradigm shift, because any of us who build things, whether it's demo apps or you're building something for school or boot camp or on your own self learning, you're probably using some open source tooling, most likely something in your uh, work somewhere in your dependencies is open source, if not most of it. And the fact that when you come to the point where you make a contribution, and the contribution could be a code contribution, could be a documentation contribution, could be anything, you're now part of that process. Like, you're actually part of like that community, and now your contribution will be in other people's code and help them in whatever they're working on and building. And that's just like, I think, such a beautiful thing and really like cool thing about the work about working in open source, is that you get to like actually help other people around the world build awesome stuff, and have fun at the same time. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. I think like my first experience was when I was working for like a client, and it was a Ruby on Rails application, and we hit a bug with something with one of our tools. And I was like, yeah, so how can I fix this?
Yeah,
And luckily it was open source, and I was like, oh wow, I can actually fix this and
right,
like help everyone, not only
right.
us, but everyone. And yeah,
Right. I
that's
know
cool.
that I was building just a short while ago a demo application to talk about our Vonage WebSockets. And as I was building it in Ruby, I noticed there was something, just it wasn't entirely clear to me in the README of one of the gems I was using to build with the demo project. And I thought, well, if it wasn't clear to me, maybe it's not clear to others. And I spent a good amount of time trying to figure this out. And then once I figured it out, instead of just then walking away, part of open source means I went back to the project and I raised an issue and then a fix with it, and it was eventually merged. And I hope, my hope in that is that, doing something like that actually helps others down the road, that when they come to that README and they're trying to figure it out, it was like encoding and decoding bit streams and audio, and that's so super complex to begin with. And if you can like decomplexify that, if that's even a word, but if you can decomplexify that even a little bit, you can help others a lot. And that's like really cool. So we got a doc site, right? Let me see if I can actually show this doc site. Just give me a moment. So we have a doc site. I'm going to share this screen. It's actually impossible to share a screen without saying you're going to share a screen. It's required. So we have this doc site here, which some of you might have seen, called Vonage Api Developer. And this is like where all of our documentation lives. So if you want to get going with one of our APIs, whether it was SMS or voice or video or anything really, you could find on here things like the guides for voice, for example. So if I click through to here, you might see how to get going with text to speech, which is a really helpful feature a lot of people use. And it's really cool, by the way. So in text to speech, you can actually say things in so many languages and dialects. And we actually just added this new feature recently where you can listen to each dialect, a sample of each dialect on the site itself, so you can get a sense of which one you want to use specifically. Or you wanted to use speech recognition, which is to actually have our APIs help understand and transcribe for you audio text, so all kinds of cool stuff. We also have API reference documentation here that you can actually export as well and use in your program building. So all this exists here, right? And it's a cool site. And you and I, Fabian, we like work on this. This is like our job, is essentially to work on this site. And this site, by the way, is also open source. Everything on this is open source, and it's on GitHub on our repositories as well. And then another line of the business for Vonage, our Vonage Business Cloud line of the business, approached us and said, our doc site that we use is kind of getting near end of life for a variety of reasons. Would it be possible to just take this site and change the content, right? Swap in, swap out.
Right. Yeah, as simple as that,
as
right?
simple as that, because it's always as simple as that, right? Just swap in, swap out. Super easy. And I think they approached you, Fabian, because you actually, you're the tech lead, and you were like, maybe it's not so simple. What did you exactly say to them?
Well, so at first I was kind of intrigued by it because, we were building the site just for us. And I was like, okay, so what exactly do you need? Our two sites like similar in terms of what use cases do you need? And well, they said, okay, they're quite similar. We all need to show documentation. We need to show API specification in a specific format. We use OpenAPI specs for API references. And I was like, okay, we can work with that. So why don't you turn this into a platform so we can power our own site with this?
I mean, that's pretty amazing, right? So because every use case of a portal, right? So you have a developer portal with specific docs needs, and every use case is going to be a little different, and it's not as simple as just a quick swap, right? You can't just do a switch in place. And so instead of just going through this and refactoring our doc site specifically for them, what we decided to do is actually to try and make to the greatest benefit of maximum amount of people as we possibly could. And so we converted this into a open source platform tool, which can have essentially full customization and be able to deployed for a variety of instances, which is pretty awesome. So I'm going to actually show that for a minute, the code. So if you go to station, this is actually where the code for this platform tool lives. And do you want to talk a little about like what are the underlying architectural choices there, like what we transitioned to, things like that?
Sure. So essentially, your station is a Ruby on Rails application that uses Webpack for the assets, and it has a few Vue.js components here and there for a few dynamic interactions that we have. It's bundled into a Ruby gem, which is a software package that you can install in your application. And yeah, the main reason behind this is, I know, when was it, Ben? Like 2 years ago when this all started? I guess, yeah, I wasn't with the company at the time, but they decided to build the site using Ruby on Rails instead of like Markdown, like a static site generator. I mean, you joined before me, right?
Yeah, I joined like a half a year before you. But before we even get going any further, I have to say hi to a few people who have said hi to us, which is Shreyas. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If I'm not, I apologize. And Sudipto. Shreyas, hello. It's so nice to see you in like real life. Shreyas has made some great contributions to our Vonage repos actually in spirit of Oktoberfest, and I got to review a couple of them. So it's really, really nice to like say hi to you. And Sudipto, hello, and Luke, hello, Luke, and hello, Lauren. It's nice to have you all join us. So back to the conversation. So I joined about 2 years ago. You joined about a year and a half ago, and they decided. People who were before us as well, 2017, decided we need a doc site, we need a developer portal. Let's build it with Ruby on Rails initially because it's easy and quick, relatively easy. Nothing's fully easy in life, right? But relatively easy to get going with, quick to start up with, and like it's got a well-tread path, right? Like if you need support, you can find a lot of queries on Stack Overflow. Like it's got a well-tread path with Ruby on Rails. So it began as a Ruby on Rails site. And we didn't just use a static site generator because our objective was to be as customizable as possible, because we didn't know what the future for our needs would look like down the road. And we always wanted to be able to have the possibility to say yes to a product need or a feature need or a feature request. And so we built it with Rails because we wanted to be able to add things as continue went on and on. Not Jamstack, Luke. Sorry. This is we're proud Rubyists here. We built a Ruby on Rails, and so when we like how long ago did we start converting this into Station? Was this like 5 months ago, 6 months ago?
Something like that. Yeah, I think we started like back in March.
I think March. I think that's actually right. I kind of time it with like the first national lockdown for me, so like around March. And so when we decided to convert it to Station, we decided to keep that tech stack underlying it because it served us so well in the evolution of our API developer portal in the past nearly 3 years before that moment. And it just made sense. It was something we were really familiar with. And then we came to the question of how do we... Michael Heap has joined us. Hello, Michael. Everyone should know Michael is on vacation right now, and yet he is here with us on Twitch. And it is so moving to see him. Hello, Michael. So we decided to keep that tech stack. And then it wasn't a difficulty per se. It was really like an architectural question of how do we customize a Ruby on Rails site and let it become not only customized, but let it be customizable for each instance of it. So what did we decide to do ultimately? So what we decided to do, if I'm not mistaken, and I might be mistaken, is we actually allowed customization through a lot of different configuration files that users get to specify. So we actually included a few configuration file samples in the docs. It's in Station itself to help get going. And by the way, before we would get there, the reason why we did that and kept those sample config files is if you go to um, GitHub. Or that's nextmode.github.io, if I'm not mistaken. Nextmode.github.io/station. You come to what we spent a little bit of time trying to put some docs together for how you would get up and going with Station, because we realized that, yeah, we built this open source platform tool, but it's a lot of work involved in getting it up because there's a lot of things to customize, and we wanted to make it as accessible as possible. So we put some time to build some docs around it. And if you look at getting started, or how to use precisely, there's a lot of different configuration it requires. And these are all in YAML. If you've written YAML before, anyone here, it's a love or hate relationship. I've come to love YAML. Fabian, how about you?
Yeah.
You know, it's okay. So it's a lot of different configuration files in YAML. And we try to specify what each one should do. So, for example, one of the most important ones is the businessinfo.yaml, which is where you put specific business or organizational information for the platform. Things like the name of the platform, the path to its header and footer logos, things like that. And we tried to name the YAML config files after what they do. Right? Why name for purpose? That was important in our design. So something like topnavigation.yaml would be the links for the top navigation bar, right? We gave it a name, hopefully that was descriptive of what was going to go inside of it. Meta info, things that go typically inside the head tag of a web page. So things to help with SEO, search engine optimization, and all that kind of fun stuff. So if we go back to those config files, now that we get a sense of that, you'll see something like, let's go look at businessinfo.yaml. So you see here, like, top level name, it's a string, business communications API. If you want to add a subtitle to the name, developer center, the base URL of the site is this. And then under assets would be sub parameters of like the header logo with the path and alt text for the header logo, the footer logo, and then footer information. So try to make it as relatively straightforward as we could, if that makes sense. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, but especially good morning to Exegete, who says it's morning time. So hey, good to see you. So we decided to use YAML files as the base to configure it, because we have a Ruby on Rails site, which we've now sort of built on top of an execution path to be able to execute it with docs, execute it with content, and we wanted to be able to customize it.
Right, because like the site is composed of two things actually, like the code for the application, and we also have the docs in a different repo, right?
So talk about that. So we have code for the platform, code for the portal here in Station, right? Where are the docs? Like, where would they be?
Right. So the docs now live in a different repo. In the case of the page that Ben just showed, they live in github.com/nexmo developer. And in there you can find all the documentation that is available on the site, together with the API references as well.
Right. And so one of the greatest things I think that has happened because of this split of our documentation portal from a portal to a portal and a platform, so disaggregated, that the platform now exists on its own repo called Station, which we've just been looking at, and the docs now exist in their own repo. In this case, it's called Nextmode Developer, is that we've separated out the different purposes, right? And so if you want to contribute documentation to developer.nexmo.com, if you want to contribute docs to this site, you don't have to know how to contribute docs, how to write Ruby, for example. You don't need to know how to work with the Ruby on Rails platform. You need to know some Markdown, right? How to write Markdown files and how to write docs. essentially. You need to know what you need to know. And
Right.
if you
Yeah.
want to work on Station, you need to know about Ruby and Ruby on Rails and maybe Vue, Vue.js as for some components, and Webpack and the asset pipeline. You need to know Ruby and code, right? You need to know what you need to know, but you don't need to know everything, right?
Right. Yeah. That was one of the main points that we identified uh, back in the day. So we have different types of contributors. Like we have engineers contributing code or documentation, and we also have technical writers and even people from outside the company. They just want to improve the docs, right?
Especially during
And
Hacktoberfest.
right. So yeah, most of the times, if you want to contribute docs, as you said, you don't really need to know how to program or even or a specific language like Ruby or JavaScript or whatever. So as booting up the application in the past was a bit hard for most of the people that are not familiar with it. Um, so with this, by splitting the code from the content, it's actually quite simple.
Exactly. So if you take example of like this Hacktoberfest issue that was opened by one of our colleagues, Mark, um, prior to the split of the portal into a platform called Station and the portal of Next One Developer, to get going to do the work of this Hacktoberfest issue, you would have most likely needed to have known a good amount of how to run a Ruby on Rails application. And writing the markdown, writing the docs would have felt like coding in a lot
Yeah,
of it.
definitely.
And it shouldn't feel like coding, because writing documentation is in itself an expertise. It is something that is valued in and of itself. And we shouldn't presume that it's a subset of coding. It's equal to. And you should be able to do your expertise without having to be an expert in someone else's expertise.
Right, and that's something that we saw how it changed in terms of the contributions that we get. So in the past, we had a lot of messages on Slack saying, can somebody update this page or that code snippet or whatever?" Because yeah, they weren't familiar with the Ruby, or they didn't even know how to program. And now that we introduce this change, we don't get that many messages from that type, and they just create pull requests
With the
with the
content.
change.
And
Right.
that's amazing. And I actually think so. As I've been thinking a lot about sort of the evolution of our platform and portal for the past few week or so, because I'm preparing a presentation for it for API the Docs, and listening to your podcast on the topic as well, and reading up on the history, you can actually see an evolution of Nextman Developer from being an evolution of like, I would actually say like, and you use this term in your podcast, and I think it's exactly right, like democratization of access. Like it is becoming more and more accessible for all to be able to contribute and use it in the ways they want to use it over time. So like when the
Right.
portal was first released in 2017, there was minimal automation and a lot of human intervention needed, and it was error prone and buggy. It was first, I mean, let's first like give credit where credit is due. It was an amazing thing to do, and it was awesome. And yet, like at the same time, it was very hard to get it right if you weren't necessarily a developer. And even if you were a developer, there are a lot of things you had to check on your own all the time. And so, since that time, we've been constantly iterating and adding more automation and test suites, spell checking, checking for broken links, et cetera, et cetera. And now we're at a point where if we want to add a feature, so I want to talk about this with you for a minute. Like if we want to add a feature to allow for internationalization, right? If we want to be able to add content in other languages to Nexmo Developer, to Vonage Api Developer platform, developer.nexmo.com. But we also know that we want to add that content eventually to other instances of the platform. Or we know that even without outside Vonage, just if people are using Station and they want to be able to internationalize content, we can create a pull request in Station with code changes to help create a pipeline for internationalization. And that will once it's released as a new release version of the gem, will be accessible to everyone. Like in one pull request, we can make a change that's accessible to everyone, which is pretty awesome. Uh, I think that's pretty great. And so, like for example, so this is what we're working on right now, right? And you see, like it started September 14th, and I don't know what day we are now, October 29th. This has been a long work in progress to add, and we're getting to the finish line, hopefully, is to add a translation automation pipeline. So when you add content in English or update content in English, it will automatically trigger, depending on different settings you configure, the workflow to translate that to the languages that you want to translate it into. So for us, in this instance, we're working on Chinese and Japanese. And then down the road, we might add it to other languages as well.
And this is actually huge for us because right now the platform supports different languages, but it's kind of like a manual process because we have to, we use a third-party company for the translations, right? And so what we have to do right now is we push the files, the English files, manually to the platform, to the third-party company, and then we download the translations once they are ready. And with those translations, we create a pull request, and then we merge them. And so that takes us a while. And with this, it all will be done automatically, which is awesome.
Yes, exactly, which is really, really cool. Sudipto asked, is making contributing easier a part of good developer experience? I think you asked that question just so we can answer yes. I believe it is. I think, and I think Fabian agrees, that democratizing access and enabling people of all skill levels and all backgrounds to contribute will make your content more reflective of its users. It'll make it more, which then it makes it more relevant to those who need it and who want to benefit from it. Sudipto, thank you. So Sudipto, so let's just show this question because it's really great. Is making contributing easier part of the developer experience? And then what was his next follow-up comment? We did not pay him for this. This is totally unprompted because Vonage does great at it. We really appreciate that. Totally unprompted. That's so nice. You know, I would say that we tried our best at it. We don't always reach our goal. We don't always meet it, but we do try our best to reach the best content we can and make it as accessible as we can. And it's been a work in progress. And we're constantly growing in that work in progress. And we rely on the feedback of our community to help us grow there, because we will always have areas that we can't see or we're just not aware of because our own sort of focus is limited by definition. And so having others come into the ecosystem and tell us or share with us areas where we're challenging allows us to continue to grow that scope. So we really appreciate that. Really do, Sudipto. Thank you. And one other pull request that's currently live right now is this pull request. It was open 14 days ago, so not as historical yet, although it might get there, about a feedback widget. Like, what's going on here, Fabian?
Right. Well, maybe you can actually show the that in the preview app.
What's the preview app? I mean, I'm asking. I know it, but I'm asking for you to talk about it.
So we deploy the site to Heroku, right? And for each pull request that we create something called review app, which is some sort of similar to a production environment, but with the code from the pull request. So you can actually test all your changes on an actual application that is running in a production environment. So yes, we can maybe take a look at that in the for the widget.
So I clicked on, which is pretty cool, right? Next one to have deployed to Station PR360 Vue deployment. So I clicked on that, and you see the link there is a Heroku app, and when you don't load a Heroku app for a while, it goes a review app. Sorry, it goes dormant, and so it takes a minute or two to restart the review app. So it's restarting it, but it's coming up right now. So now this looks like Vonage API Developer. Just one moment, my friends. Fabian, keep on talking. I'm going to ask my kids to get back to their schoolwork. So give me 1 minute, okay? If that's what you hear in the background, is my kids not doing their remote
Sure,
school.
no worries.
School is neither remote nor school. Discuss. I'll be right back.
So yeah, this new feedback widget that we are working on is a huge change from what we have right now. So we've been looking at all the feedback that we gotten in the past months and years and analyze its content, just to see in which areas we can improve, not only the platform but the content. And we realized that some of the feedback that we got are related to the your account, and some to other stuff like I don't know how to program, and I just want to send an SMS. So we analyzed that, and we come up with new feedback widget, which the idea is to get better feedback from our users. And so, yeah, Ben, if you can click on documentation.
Yes, click on documentation. So
yeah,
what I just wanted to say as well is that if you look at this, it looks exactly like the production instance of the Vonage API Developer website, except this is actually running from a very specified review app, which is labeled named for the PR number that's associated with, and it has the code in that PR in that pull request. So somebody who's reviewing the code can actually look at a live instance of what that code would do to the API developer site without needing to clone it locally, although that's probably a good idea still. But an additional step, without having to clone it locally, you can actually see what it looks like, which is pretty awesome. So I've clicked on documentation, Fabian. Where should I go now?
Yeah, just click on the feedback button on the right-hand side.
This little purple friend here?
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, and so the main idea here is to collect better feedback and to guide the user into the different scenarios. So you start off with this, and then depending on the issue that you found, you can provide us with more information about it, so we can fix it.
Code. So actually, let's make this live. So if I go to messaging, SMS, code snippets, send an SMS. So here's curl code snippet for sending an SMS, and I want to get feedback on it. So I click here, and I'm having problems with the sample code. Let's say it's not working for me, or it didn't work for me. And then, so the next step is then asking specifically what happened with the sample code. It either didn't work, it wasn't helpful, or the documentation is missing useful samples. Let's say it doesn't work, and then I can actually provide specific feedback.
Right, and with this we can fix the issues right away and improve the user experience in the end.
And I click continue, and then we get a thank you. That's so nice. And then what's really cool, and this is not public facing, so you wouldn't necessarily see this world of Twitch, is that every point of documentation is actually received by us, and we actually see it as it happens, and we respond to them. So when they're actionable, and if a user has raised a question that is actionable, we actually reach out to that user and try and help them and further clarify. So one example recently is a user had an issue with documentation that existed around text-to-speech, and they raised the issue in that feedback loop. And it got into our sightline, as they all do. And I personally reached out to that person and helped address the issue for them. And that's actually done regularly. So we see the feedback. And if the feedback is on a per person use case, something is broken for that person, whether it's on their account or in their implementation, we try as best as we can to help them in that instance, or direct them to where they can get further help. And if it's something structurally around the website, whether it's a code snippet is broken or something is not rendering correctly, we actually take that and act upon it as soon as we possibly can within our workflow. So it's actually
Right.
super helpful.
Yeah, we even have a Slack integration for that.
We do have a Slack integration. That was what I was hinting at.
Yeah, we have a Slack channel that collects all the feedback, and every time we see a new comment, we take a look at it, and create a Jira ticket and fix it if we can.
If we can, and if it's something on the person level, then we reach out to the person if we're able to.
Right.
If they leave contact information, so we'll reach out to them. It's really, really helpful. And so Exegete here wrote that per branch staging servers are the best, and I totally agree. They really are the best. And Michael has mentioned to us that we really can't live without them. And Michael, as usual, you're 100% correct. We really can't live without them because they enable, again, it's like going back to that democratization of access. They enable people to review content contributions without needing to pull down the code, run the platform, the portal locally, have to figure out how to do all of that. They can actually just look at the review app, see the content live, without needing to actually be experts in code. They can be experts in what they're experts in and don't need to be experts in anything else, which is really cool. And, we're not paying you people. Like, you keep on giving us these nice feedback, and it's really, we really appreciate it. You should know that Fabian, and I'm going to say this, and he'll probably be a bit embarrassed, has worked very hard on that Feedback Widget UX UI and worked on the workflow on that. And I know he appreciates it. And he doesn't like when I compliment him overly, but I like complimenting him. And he did a fantastic job on that. So he says thank you.
Yeah, well, the credit actually goes to Mark Lewin, which is one of our technical writers who came up with this new Feedback Widget.
They're both exceptional people. I'm fortunate to work with good people. They don't notice that I write on their coattails mostly. They're awesome. So we have, let me go back to the GitHub repo. So we actually have a few Hacktoberfest issues open in Station. So we have two here. One is both, by the way, I think are related to both are related to the overall evolution of this platform from a portal into a platform, which is, if we remember what we discussed about, we said that initially this started off as the Vonage Api Developer website, developer portal, which was initially called the Nexmo Developer Portal, right? And so it's executable. The name by which you execute the platform when you're running it is named after what it was started off as in March, which was Nexmo Developer. And as we iterated and built on it, we never actually got around to changing the name of the executable to be the name of the actual thing, which is Station. So did we actually finish this? So if I click on here, this looks like it's an issue. Nope. So no one has actually finished this pull request yet. And today is the 29th, which means there's still a few more days left of Hacktoberfest if someone wanted to do this. There's two of them, and they're both related. One is to rename the code base to Station. This one's a bit more involved. It could be a bit of find and replace, but you have to be a little more careful than find and replace. You need to really then go back and make sure everything still works, and then maybe add a couple tests to ensure that the successful transition happens. So throughout the code base, things are called Nexmo Developer. In the class names, things like that. So going through it and renaming those things to Station. And the other one is a little less involved, although equally important, which is to rename the executable to Station. So the way you would start Station is with this executable. And the executable can actually be found if you look in the code in the bin directory, and you see it's called, what's it called? Nexmo Developer. And so renaming this to Station and making sure it works. So it is also more than just a simple rename. It's also making sure things work and you haven't broken anything in the process. So this is the executable. You see it takes a bunch of flags. You can start it with a -d or -doc, specify the path documentation, -h or --help to get all this printed out for you. You can run the rake CI tasks, run the testing suite, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the two open pull requests now. Look, people can contribute to it during Hacktoberfest, or you can do it because you love open source and you want to do it after November. We will probably also, in our own internal team, get to it at some point as well. These are things on our roadmap to change, but we are also building these translation pipelines for internationalization. The feedback thing that we just showed is right now as well, the whole feedback workflow change. So there's things that are a bit of higher priority for us in our personal internal workflow. So we will get to it eventually, but if someone wanted to take it on, we'd be really happy to look at those PRs and review them too. Do you agree, Fabian?
Yeah, I do. And yeah, just don't be afraid of changing stuff. We do have a lot of checks that we run for each pull request, just to make sure that nothing is broken.
When you say we run checks for pull requests, are you referring to our GitHub Actions workflows?
I might.
Really? That is so interesting. It's as if we're prompting each other. So if you look at the GitHub Actions workflows, you actually see that we have a bunch here named for different things, different activities. One is called CI, which would be, as it's named, our continuous integration tests. Deployment status, publish to Docker, pull request review. This generates the review apps, and release adds release workflow. And we have to, by the way, give a lot of credit where credit is due to Michael Heap, who, in addition to being a senior director of something or other in Vonage, basically a high up person, also really enjoys writing code a lot and finds opportunities / excuses to write code. And he has helped us tremendously in the past period of time building up these actions. He's become a bit of an actions expert, so a lot of these actions are from him. And then we get the joy of maintaining them after he builds them and releases them out into the wild. Thankfully, he writes pretty decent code, so it's not too hard to maintain. So if you look at these workflows, let's take a look at the CI one here, for example. If you've ever worked with actions besides Michael Heap, let us know in the comments. Love to hear your comments about that, as well as we've now transitioned to the actions phase of our conversation, the GitHub Actions phase. If you haven't worked with actions but you're curious, maybe this might be an interesting reveal into this exciting world of GitHub Actions. So GitHub Actions workflows are in YAML. Just like, is it a coincidence? Maybe not. GitHub Actions workflows are in YAML, just like Station's config files are in YAML. So for us as Station developers, writing YAML for the workflow and writing YAML for Station, it all feels very similar. It all flows. Every action will have a name which identifies it, which is here at CI, and it will have an event type in which it will get triggered. You could have multiple event types, and the GitHub docs actually talk about all different triggers for what you can activate an action for. And they could be things like pushing to a branch, could be when an issue is opened or closed, or pull requests open or closed, or the list goes on and on. And so for us here, for the CI, it's when there was a pull request that was opened or synchronized, right? And then we have jobs, and each job is a distinct step in the process. And each step in a job is its own instance of a shell shell process that happens. And those are indicated with the dashes. So we have several in here. One is we check out the code, we set up Node, we install things, JS stuff, whatever that means, all the JavaScript brand. We set up Ruby. We install our Ruby dependencies. We set up our PostgreSQL database. Set up that because we need that. We install everything. We precompile the assets. So there's a lot of actions here. And then what we do here, which is I think is really interesting, starting at line 79, is we actually fetch the very different instances right now that we're iterating on of Station. So remember, one is the Vonage API Developer, developer.nextmo.com. The other one is the Vonage Business Cloud, Vonage Developer Portal. So we actually check out both of those. And we run the Stations testing suite against both of them. Because why not? Actions are free for public repositories. GitHub, in its sheer goodness, is not charging us to run actions. So might as well do it. Run it on everything. Why not? The more testing,
right,
the better.
And yeah, the main idea is that we want to make sure that we don't break any instance out there
Of Station, right?
With each release.
So we fetch both of them. We fetch Nextmo Developer. We fetch Business Vonage Developer, and we run the tests for the platform, and then we run the tests specifically for the instance of the platform. So those tests, like the Nextmo Developer tests, the Vonage API Developer platform tests, are really content-specific tests. They're like tests that are checking that the content is the way we expect it to look like. Whereas the platform tests are testing really primarily the code of Station. Does the renderers work? Do the renderers work? Do the Open API renderer work? Et cetera, et cetera. What is VDP? So, Michael Heap, if you joined us earlier, you had a wonderful introduction to the Vonage Developer Platform. VDP is actually, let me see if I can load it on here. If I can type. Oh, what is VDP? Where is it? Michael, where is VDP? What's the URL for VDP? Since you seem to know everything, and you do know everything. So there's two instances of right now that are running. Or Fabian, do you happen to know? There are two instances that are running Station. One is this, Vonage API Developer, and the other one is our Vonage Business Cloud, which is a software tool, which is amazing, by the way, and a lot of my friends in the office work on it to help you do communications. It's office suite of communication tools. Michael, you're brilliant. So you can actually go to developer.uc.vonage.com. Thank you, Michael. We really appreciate it. Go to developer.uc.vonage.com, and you see their instance of Station right here. And surprisingly, it looks very similar because that's the goal, is they should have a similar look, but very different content, right? We don't see the Vonage API Developer content. We see content specific to their suite of tooling. Telephony, call recording, provisioning, reports, and then you see some other issues here as well, which is pretty cool. And so going back to the CI file, so we run the specific test suites for both. And then we also run the JavaScript tests because JavaScript should be tested, especially JavaScript should be tested, no offense. And then we get to spell checking as well because we also run a spell checker. So we use all these GitHub Action workflows to try and ensure that when we push up changes, we're not breaking anything.
Yeah, maybe we can show the output of one of the runs.
Should
for
we do
one
that?
of the pull requests.
Let's do it.
I think I broke the build in my pull request.
Should we look at one that is broken or one that's working, or both? One that passes.
Both works for me.
Okay, let's look at one that's broken or one that failed. So this is what actions look like when you're looking at the dashboard for an actions run. And you see it's running the CI action YAML. And there's the name of the build of the job called build. And you can click into it. And if you, let me close that for a minute. You see each step that we just went through in the YAML file, each step is actually highlighted as something you can click through and expand. So naming your steps in an action workflow is super important for you, future you, and others to be able to actually identify them and see like specifically what step you want to look at and click into. So fetch VDP, let's click all the way up. So we set up the job correctly. You see the green mark. It creates a Docker instance. It checkouts all these wonderful things, or it just checks out all these. Sorry, checks out all these repos, checks out the code in each of them, and then we initialize a container, which is we check the Docker version, we create a Docker container, starting the database service container, all kinds of Docker magic. Then we run, let's say, setup node. So we set up node. So node is now running. We install the packages with using Yarn, and then we set up Ruby. These are all working. Bundle install of all Ruby gems is working. We fetched the 2 instances of station. That worked. Precompiling the assets also worked. And where it broke down was actually running the platform test. And once it broke down, you see like there's kind of a line through the circle here. It stopped running these because it broke here. And then it did its cleanup actions, but it stopped running the further tests once it had a fail. And so we were able, if we click through there, you can actually see all the steps. So we were able to create the database, right? And we created all the tables in the database, a lot of tables, a lot of database action happening. So many tables, Fabian.
Yeah, it's actually not a lot, but yeah.
It feels like a lot.
It's a bit verbose, yeah.
It's very verbose, right? And then we start running our testing suite, right? And then we see here, we actually have the tests all pass. So we use RSpec to run our Ruby testing, which is a very standard testing library in Ruby. They all pass, 468 examples, 0 failures. And then we do something else. We also run RuboCop. RuboCop is a linter check for Ruby. It's probably the most common one in Ruby world. And we see we actually have 2 failures there, or 3 failures. I should correct myself. They're not failures, they're offenses. So we inspected 245 files, 3 offenses, and 1 was actually autocorrectable. So we could fix this automatically using RuboCop's magic. Here, and RuboCop essentially tries to enforce certain styling for Ruby. So it's not necessarily a failure in the code execution. It's just trying to maintain a consistent code standard. Which is really important because, Fabian and I are not going to be working on this for the rest of our lives. And at some point, others will come into this and want to be able to pick up on it, or an open source contributor might want to pick up on it. And there's certain conventions in Ruby which make it easier to be able to pick up in a Ruby code base if it all looks kind of within conventions. So we see
and while you review the code, you can actually focus on what the code does and not if it follows the right standards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we see there's 3 issues here. We see one of them is redundant, self-detected. We could just say last, I guess, here, et cetera, et cetera. So once we fix these, then we would then push up those fixes to RuboCop from RuboCop. Then it would run. We already know at this point that the RSpec, our Ruby testing suite, passes. Once this passes, we'll get to the next step, which would be to run the NDP tests and the VDP test. So if we go back to one that did actually pass, this is a review app. I want to find one for the CI.
Yeah, I guess a lot of those are related to the feedback. Maybe you can go to the pull requests page. Yeah.
Here, this is a good one. Okay, so we were at the platform tests before, and now they pass, and now it runs the test specifically for Vonage Api Developer, and they all pass. We had one pending test where we disabled, but it passed. And then we run the VDP tests, they pass. Run the JavaScript tests, they pass. And we actually, the tests are themselves a bunch of different actions. So we verify the pages, verify the navigation works, verify the Open API specification is rendering correctly. We check to make sure we're not using any blocked words, and we check the Ruby version matches. We run all of our JavaScript tests with Yarn, and we check the feedback is working correctly, and then et cetera, et cetera. We check spell checker, make sure that there is no incorrectly spelled words. This catches a lot of our British colleagues a lot, Fabian, because our spell checker enforces American English, which, and I always say to those who are doing PR reviews that our British colleagues didn't actually spell anything incorrectly, they just spelled it differently.
Yeah.
It's just different. It's not incorrect. It might even be more correct. Who knows? But we are enforcing English, American English. And then we complete the job. So that's actually what that looks like, which is pretty cool. Any other comments on GitHub Actions? Oh, by the way, Luke offered a great comment, which is I have GitHub Action woes right now, and I selfishly wish Michael Heap was around at work. I also had GitHub Action woes this week and last week, and I also selfishly wish Michael Heap was at work as I was building an action, which I eventually did get working, but it would have been much faster if Michael Heap was around. I could have bothered him, but I decided
but now
not.
You know how to build them.
I know, but the problem for me in that action, by the way, was I was trying to trigger the action when there was a change to when a pull request was merged. Or change to a code in the main branch, in the master branch. And there isn't actually a merge event in GitHub triggers. And so this might have been straightforward to others. It wasn't straightforward to me right away, and it took a lot of digging. And then I realized I could write the action for when there was a push to the master branch. Because in our workflow, we only push the master branch on a successful pull request merge. So we can safely assume that a push to the master branch is going to be the equivalent. But it took me a while to get there. But now I know it, and I can teach others because I couldn't just ask Michael Heap, and he couldn't just tell me. And I had to actually read the GitHub docs and figure it out. But I was proud of myself for not interrupting him during his vacation. Sudipto is writing a Ruby workflow right now. How's it going for you, Sudipto? Do you want to let us know? Is it coming along? Are you facing any challenges in your Ruby workflow? I'd love to hear what's going on there. So we use a lot of actions, and we have a lot of fun with them, and they help us do the work and focus on what we can focus on, and let the automation focus on what it can focus on. The build succeeded after 4 failures. Sudipto, that's pretty good. My build succeeds usually after 35 failures. So you're doing great there. Sudipto knows literally everything. Shreyas is probably correct. Fair fails is pretty good. You should look at some of my workflow history as I try to build actions. It's like run again, rerun workflow, rerun workflow, at least 135,000 times. So
that's not true.
What is this? Have you seen github.com/nectos/act for testing locally? I have, but not everyone has seen it. So let's actually look at it. github.com/ what was it? nectos/act with a K? See?
Yeah.
K. So what is this? Run your GitHub actions locally. Why would you want to do this? You know why you want to do this? Because it saves you so much time. Running your GitHub actions locally is super helpful because the way in which you test GitHub actions without running locally is to actually push up the change to GitHub and rerun your workflow over and over again to watch the results. Using this tool, which this person graciously provided, and there is a sponsor tag up there, allows you to actually simulate the GitHub environment and run it locally, which is pretty helpful, if I do say so myself. So that's a bit of an overview of sort of Station. We wandered and took a lot of paths on other topics, but we're really happy with Station. We spent some time on, so if you go to here in docs, Station/docs, right, master docs, this is where we put up some getting started, how to use Station. We spent some time working on this. There's more to come. If you start building with Station, or you're going to work on one of those pull requests that are, or one of those issues, that are open for Hacktoberfest for Station, and you run into issues getting Station up locally or how to use it, and you solve those issues, or one of us helps you solve those issues, or somehow you figure it out, and it's not covered in this, we would love pull requests in that to improve that docs experience. Because yes, Station hopefully helps democratize access to contribution and accessibility. But Station as a platform that does a lot of things and continuously does more is by definition, almost existentially, a complex thing. And you can only simplify complexity so much. But even having said that, we want to make sure that the docs help get it up and running as much as possible, given the fact that, yes, it is by nature of the beast, a complex thing. It's doing a lot of things. It's got a lot going under the hood. So like if you come to the Station docs, what was it again? It was nextmode.github.io/station. And you're reading through this and you're like, oh, this is really cool. What problems does Station solve? How does it accomplish it? Let's get started. And talk about how to create the gem file to get started, how to boot it up the first time. You see this down here. This site is open source, improve this page. If there's something missing here, or something missing in the how to use page, or the the how to use page, click on that and help improve it, because not only will you help improve it for yourself, you might help improve it for others as well, which is super important. And like the beauty of open source.
Right. Maybe you can also show the GitHub Actions repo, just in case somebody wants to use our actions, or just take a look at them and see how they work, in case they want to like adapt them to their workflow.
It's a very good point. So this is the GitHub Actions repo, and there's a bunch of actions in here. Let's see here. So this one is a cool one. So these are actually the actions, right? So this is not the workflows to initialize the action and run it. This is actually like the code for the action. And they're written in JavaScript primarily. There's a lot of tooling to support you in building actions in JavaScript. You can write actions, correct me if I'm wrong, but actions can be written, they're actually language agnostic. You can write them in any language, I think so. But there's more tooling. The ecosystem for writing them in Node or JavaScript is actually a lot more rich. And so there's a lot more support for you. Hello, Rick. Nice to have you join us. So this one checks for redirects. And it's really important. So when deleting or renaming content, sometimes we forget to add a redirect to replacement content, and customers get a 404 on their saved links. This action will fail the build when it detects a rename without a redirect. So on fast-moving content, right, on a developer portal, you're constantly doing things, you're iterating, you're moving, you're changing stuff all the time. And then you change a link, but you forget that a user had bookmarked that link. And that was where they go to get the help on what they're building. And now it gives them a 404 back, and you've broken their link. This action will fail the build unless you've created a redirect for that link. This is about user experience, right? And so if like look at the actual...
And it saved us more than one time, actually.
It saved us like 500 times, at least. So like if you look at this actual action, so it's written in JS. It requires YAML because it's reading in YAML. Oops, I didn't want to click on that. It requires file system because it's interacting with the file system, and it takes the actions toolkit, which is again part of that like ecosystem of building actions in Node, which is really helpful. And then it like gets all the context for the action from the GitHub environment, which GitHub environment, when you're running actions, provides you a lot of information about the action. Provides you with the reference points for the base and the head refs, provides you for the owner, the repo name, etc. and then checks that the action is in the right trigger, either open or synchronize. And then this is a function from this actions toolkit, which actually, let's click on that for a second. Actually, I've been using this a lot myself as well. It is so helpful. So this actions toolkit maps all its functions directly to, let's see, where can I find the link? The link is in here. Yes, directly to this, to the GitHub docs on its JS stuff. So like all of the docs for these function names are referenced there, and they are named for what they are. So compare commits compares across 2 commits, right? Which is super helpful. That really needs updating. My bad, Michael. You're doing a great job. You don't need to say you're my bad. And then it basically checks for file changes. If a file status, which is what you get back from GitHub Actions, sort of like status updates, if one of the statuses of files was renamed, right, and renamed obviously means as it's stated, it's renamed. It checks to see if that file is in the documentation, which is what's rendered on our developer portal. So it checks to see if it's a documentation file, which would be like a 404 link that's renamed and doesn't get redirected. If it's not there, then it just continues, right? It goes to the next file. If it is there, it stores it in this new array of objects with the from, what was it originally called, and what is it now called, from and to, right? And and then it checks basically for renamed and removed files. It loads the redirects YAML, so we can actually take a look at that. Let's take a look at that for a minute. And Nextmo developer, config redirects.yaml, and we see a map here, right? This map is of the link that was, the link that will be, if I'm not mistaken. That's right. The link that was, the link that will be. So it loads that redirects YAML. Let's go back here. I'm reading JavaScript, so help me, Fabian, if I make a mistake. It loads that redirect file. There's 2 of them. Okay, so it loads 2 of them, and then it checks if that file path that was renamed is there. Then great. If not, then it says you're basically missing a redirect, right? So it checks for the presence of that redirect in the redirect YAML. If the redirect mapping is there, fantastic. You've done your job. It won't produce a 404. If there isn't a map between the old name to the new name, then if you would push this to master and release this, then you would encounter a 404 in that link, and that's not good for user experience. So that's an example of one of our actions, which is really cool. And then, and we were adding actions. So I built an action. I struggled and prevailed to build an action over the past few days to check for docs changes. So that's here as well, waiting for Fabian to review it and fix my JavaScript. It's not too big, so hopefully not too much to fix. But essentially, again, like looks for changes to looks for changes in one of these folders, documentation, tutorials, or use cases, again, where our content typically lives. And if the push was made to that folder and it's a markdown file, it checks if it was removed. I ignore it. I don't care about removed files, but if it was pushed to it, then I add it to an array of push file paths, and then I return the file paths because I want these file paths for part of the translation workflow. I need those file paths to translate those files. And so I need to know what files were changed in a recent change to be able to start the workflow for internationalization translation. So not overly complex. And yet it's JavaScript, so it might need some help. So that's our GitHub Actions, which are super helpful. We couldn't live without these GitHub Actions. Like they really save us all the time. I do want to end, or not end, or at least take us to our Hacktoberfest landing page. Everything you want to know. If you're October 29th and you're like, I want to contribute to Hacktoberfest and I want to do it with Vonage, everything you want to know, Fabian, right, is right here on developer.nextman.com/Hacktoberfest. You can find how you can contribute, GitHub issues, especially for Hacktoberfest. So we would load this. You would find 21 live issues right now to work on for Hacktoberfest in a variety of languages: HTML, Ruby, JavaScript, Kotlin, even Kotlin. We love Kotlin. You can help build in Kotlin, which is awesome. Some repos that we've specifically highlighted. And if you make a successful pull request to Vonage, you can claim reward. What is your reward? These awesome socks or a $5 Open Collective gift card. Those are really cool socks. Do you have those socks yet, Fabian?
I do.
You have them. That's so nice.
Yeah.
I don't have them yet. I'm a little jealous. You know, I wonder if I'll get them. They're really nice.
Yeah, when you get back to.
Maybe they're waiting for me in my mailbox.
Hey.
They're probably waiting for me, honestly. I'm afraid to open my mailbox when I get back. It's probably be pretty full. And if you want to get going with Vonage, you can use the coupon code that you see on the top of the stream, which is HACKVO835, HACKVO835, which will get you some credit to get going on Vonage. And you can sign up for an account if you haven't done yet. So at dashboard.nextmo.com/sign up. And once you sign up, you can insert that coupon code and it will automatically add those to your credit. And you can just start building. So many things you can build. I mean, it's limitless. The possibilities are endless. You know, I build with it all the time. I have fun with it. There's just so much fun stuff you can do with it. I talk to my air conditioner is one of the things I built for myself. I connected my air conditioning unit at home to a voice API application. So my air conditioner tells me the temperature it is in my home, and I can turn on and off my air conditioner. I can get all the data from my air conditioner with help from the Vonage voice API. It's really kind of endless. Have you built anything fun with it? Have you done anything, like any cool things?
Not recently. No, I've been focusing on like everything we've been building for the past months. But you did build a cool birthday party app.
I did actually. So in the beginning of the first lockdown, like I guess globally everyone was locked down then, like around March or so. It was my older son's birthday, and we wanted to do something for him fun. And we're a bit limited in possibilities during a lockdown. So I used the Vonage video API, and I built him a birthday party video watch party app. And so he had a whole video chat thing, and then he could switch to a watch party in the app and share his screen and audio and watch a movie with his friends and keep on text chatting on the side during the movie. And then he actually watched a choose your own adventure video. So all of his friends like put an input like which option to choose as they were going along in the video. And then he could transition back to the video chat when they were done with the watch party. And that was really fun. I built that as a Ruby on Rails application using our video API, which meant a lot of client-side JavaScript to manipulate it and somehow managed to get it done. And at using the Vonage video API's Ruby SDK to manage the backend of the video. So you have to generate a session and create some tokens for authentication, and then use the Vonage video API JavaScript SDK in order to manage the actual video broadcast and streaming and layouts and things like that. And they work together beautifully, by the way. So if you're
like
building
the coolest dad, right?
I was the coolest dad for like 5 minutes, exactly. And like, and if you're building like a full stack video app, and you're building it like not using like JavaScript for your full stack, not a Node app, but you're doing it with like, let's say, Django or something Python related on the back end and JavaScript on the front end, or Ruby on the back end and JavaScript on the front end, our SDKs work beautifully together, and your ability to sync it is really awesome. FYI, it was a pleasure to build that. This has been fun. Any other comments, Fabian? Anything you want to leave the wonderful world with? Wisdoms of Fabian?
Wisdoms. Not really. Just remember to check out the streams that we have available. Maybe you can click on the Vonage Dev TV page.
Yeah, that's a good point. So if you go to Vonage Dev TV, you actually see a weekly calendar of our streams. We stream almost every day, which is pretty cool, and a variety of streams. So we have Lauren Learns Things at 2 p.m. UTC, developer drop-in regularly, new stream Who Dis, which you never know might be on that stream and what content will be on there. We have Build a Thing, which is really cool with Kevin Lewis, where he helps build a new project from scratch using things like Netlify functions, MongoDB, Vue.js, and the Vonage Video API. We have Vonage Gems, which is a new stream starting soon with yours truly, starting next week, where we're going to build Vonage apps with Ruby, because why not? Ruby is fun. And so you can just check this out on developer.nexmo.com/devtv and catch the Vonage team streaming regularly, which is awesome. And we would love to see your pull requests. So if in the next few days of Hacktoberfest or beyond, if you would like to contribute to Station, to Nexmo Developer, to anything, please github.com/Vonage or github.com/Nexmo, and you can find all of our repositories that are open source. You can find issues and open pull requests. And if you yourself, the best kind, or one of the best kinds of pull requests is when you yourself encounter a problem and you find a solution for it, offer that solution to others. Contribute it out to the wider world. Raise it as an issue, raise it as a pull request, help make the open source world even better. We love it. Everyone loves it. It'll be awesome. If there is any other comments, I think that was essentially it. Thank you so much for joining us in this beautiful time together. And look forward to seeing you likewise in the world of Twitch and Hacktoberfest and Vonage. Bye, everyone.